Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we're diving deep into a story that's as chilling as it is enlightening. It's about a woman who was literally told that the cure for her suffering was killing her, and when she dared to speak up, they called her hysterical. So, what did she do? She wrote a story so terrifying it's haunted readers for over 130 years, and in doing so, she exposed how medicine was, quite frankly, torturing women while calling it care. We're talking about Charlotte Perkins Gilman and the yellow wallpaper.
It's such a powerful story, John, and it really starts with Charlotte's own lived experience. Imagine being in 1887, feeling this overwhelming exhaustion, anxiety, a darkness you just can't name. Today we'd recognize it as severe postpartum depression, but back then, it was nervous prostration. A catch-all, for women whose minds and bodies just rebelled against the very constrained lives they were expected to lead.
And the solution to this nervous prostration was even more terrifying. She sought help from the esteemed Dr. Weir Mitchell, America's foremost nerve specialist. His legendary rest cure was basically enforced incapacitation. Weeks, sometimes months, of complete bed rest. No books, no writing, absolutely no intellectual stimulation. No visitors, no decisions. Just silence, submission, and domesticity. The goal was to make the patient well again, which really meant manageable again, fitting into that perfect wife and mother mold.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that level of control, isn't it? I mean, for someone as brilliant and intellectually vibrant as Charlotte Perkins Gilman, who thrived on mental activity, to be told, just lie there, be quiet, don't think. It sounds like a recipe for a mental breakdown, not a cure.
Exactly. And that's precisely what happened. The treatment nearly killed her. She felt herself drowning, suffocating. The more she rested, the worse she became. The silence didn't heal her fractured mind, it shattered it further. The isolation didn't restore her sanity, it pushed her towards the very brink of losing it entirely. She could feel herself disappearing, being systematically erased. Can you imagine the terror of that?
The irony is brutal, isn't it? The cure designed to make her a functional woman was actively stripping away everything that made her human. Her sense of self, her intellect, her very identity. It was an assault, disguised as medical care, and it speaks volumes about how women's mental health was pathologized and then treated by stripping them of agency.
What makes Charlotte so extraordinary is what she did next. In an era where women were absolutely expected to defer to male medical authority, she did the unthinkable. She stopped listening to the experts. She left the rest cure, she left her marriage, and she picked up her pen, the very act she'd been forbidden to do, and she wrote.
That's an act of pure defiance. It's like she reclaimed her voice, not just literally by writing, but her inner voice, her sanity, her very self, by rejecting the narrative imposed upon her. It's truly inspiring, honestly, when you think about the societal pressure at that time.
Absolutely. And what she wrote was The Yellow Wallpaper, published in 1892. It's a short story, only about 6,000 words, but those words have resonated for over a century because they tell a truth that was, and frankly still is, too devastating to ignore. Liz, can you walk us through the story a bit?
Of course. The story follows a woman confined to a bedroom by her physician husband, John, an obvious parallel to Dr. Mitchell and the patriarchal medical system. He insists that complete rest will cure her temporary nervous depression. She's forbidden to work, forbidden to write, forbidden to think too hard. Just rest, just be quiet, just submit. Sound familiar?
And the room itself becomes a character, really. That yellow wallpaper, it's just hideous, chaotic, maddening. As the weeks pass in enforced isolation, the narrator starts to see something behind the pattern. A woman. Trapped, creeping and crawling, desperately trying to break free.
It's such a powerful metaphor, right? The wallpaper isn't just ugly, it's a representation of the suffocating domesticity and the societal expectations that are literally driving her insane. And the woman behind it is, of course, herself, or the part of her that's being stifled and imprisoned.
Exactly. The narrator becomes obsessed. She studies the wallpaper constantly. She sees the trapped woman shaking the bars at night. She understands, finally, that she's looking at herself. By the story's end, she has completely broken free of the wallpaper. She's torn it down with her bare hands and is crawling around the room on all fours, creeping over her fainted husband's unconscious body, finally free. But it's a terrifying freedom, a descent into madness as a form of escape.
And the medical establishment, of course, was outraged. Critics called it disturbing, morbid, dangerous. Some physicians even publicly complained that such literature could damage vulnerable minds. Libraries refused to stock it. Dr. Mitchell himself was reportedly horrified.
They were supposed to be outraged, though. Charlotte hadn't written just fiction, she'd written testimony. She had turned her own medical torture into a weapon and aimed it directly at the system that claimed to help women. It was surgical in its precision, showing how care was actually control, how hysteria dismissed real suffering, and how isolation didn't cure depression but often caused it.
It's the ultimate mic drop, isn't it? They called her hysterical, and she responded by writing the definitive text on how society creates hysteria in women and then punishes them for it. That's a level of intellectual comeback that most of us can only dream of.
But Charlotte refused to stop at one story. 6 years later, in 1898, she published Women and Economics, a book that absolutely detonated in the public consciousness. Jane, what were some of her key arguments there?
Her argument was truly revolutionary and yet, at its core, so simple. Women's economic dependence on men was the root of their oppression. Until women could support themselves financially, they would never be truly free. Economic independence wasn't a luxury or a political talking point for her. It was essential to dignity, autonomy, and equality itself. And she went even further.
She really challenged the sacred cows of the era. She argued that the domestic sphere, constantly praised as women's natural place, was actually a cage that prevented their full humanity, that marriage, as structured, was often legalized servitude, and that motherhood shouldn't be the only path available to women, that society desperately needed women's contributions in every single field, not just the home.
You can imagine the backlash to that. She was called unnatural, unwomanly, dangerous, insane. Critics dismissed her ideas as absurd fantasy. But she didn't just back down, did she?
Not at all. Charlotte kept speaking anyway. She lectured across America and Europe. She was relentless. In 1909, she even founded her own magazine, The Forerunner, and for 7 years she wrote virtually all the content herself. Fiction, essays, poetry, social theory, all exploring what society could look like if women were actually free.
And she continued to push the boundaries of what was imaginable. In 1915, she wrote Herland, imagining an all-female utopia where women had built a thriving civilization without men, war, or oppression. Again, critics called it ridiculous science fiction. She argued that housework should be professionalized and communal, freeing women from isolated domestic labor. People said she wanted to destroy the family. The audacity.
Think about how radical that was then. The idea of professionalizing childcare, communal kitchens, freeing women from the unpaid, isolating grind of domestic labor. It's still something we're talking about today, honestly. She was so far ahead of her time. She insisted that women's unpaid labor in the home was real economic work that deserved recognition and compensation. And that idea was treated as laughable.
But the thing is, Charlotte Perkins Gilman was right about almost everything. The economic independence she demanded, now recognized as fundamental to women's equality and safety. Her critique of the nuclear family structure, central to feminist theory today. Her analysis of how medical and social institutions controlled women's bodies and minds. We call it medical misogyny now, and we're still fighting it every single day.
The yellow wallpaper, once dismissed as a disturbing oddity, is now taught in virtually every American literature and women's studies course. It's recognized as one of the most important works of feminist literature ever written, a chillingly accurate psychological portrait of how patriarchy drives women to the edge and then blames them for breaking.
That woman crawling behind the wallpaper, clawing desperately toward freedom, she became a metaphor that will never die. It represents every woman trapped by expectations, medical control, economic dependence, and enforced roles she never chose. It's haunting because it resonates with so many experiences, even now.
And her personal story continued to embody her fierce commitment to autonomy. In 1935, she was diagnosed with inoperable breast cancer. True to everything she believed about claiming control over her own body and choices, she chose to end her life on her own terms, leaving a final note: "I have preferred chloroform to cancer."
Even in death, she maintained that control. The world had spent her entire life trying to tell her what to do with herself, what to think, how to live, how to be well, and she refused, until the very end. That's a legacy of fierce independence.
Her legacy is truly everywhere, often in places we don't even notice it. In women's right to work and control their own money, to leave marriages that harm them, to be taken seriously when they describe their own pain, to have their depression treated as an illness rather than a moral failing or some natural female weakness. She was called hysterical, nervous, unbalanced, dangerous, unnatural, but she was clear-eyed, brilliant, and decades ahead of her time.
She told truths the world wasn't ready to hear, that the structures meant to protect women were actually prisons, that the treatments meant to cure women were actually forms of torture, that enforced domesticity and economic dependence made women vulnerable to every form of control. And she didn't just critique the cage, she showed us exactly what it looked like from the inside.
She taught us to see the bars we'd been told were protection, and she demanded we imagine what freedom could actually be. That's her enduring power, I think. She made the invisible visible.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the experts get it wrong, and it takes someone brave enough to say, "No, this isn't right," to truly bring about change. And that voice of defiance, that woman behind the wallpaper, she's still clawing her way out, and we're still learning from Charlotte Perkins Gilman how to tear down the walls.
An incredibly powerful story, and one that resonates so deeply today. Thank you, Jane, Liz, and Bob, for shedding light on Charlotte Perkins Gilman's extraordinary life and legacy. What a woman. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope this conversation sparks some thoughts and perhaps encourages you to revisit or discover the yellow wallpaper for yourself. We'll catch you next time.